Professor David Bailey joins us from Aston Business School, where he specialises in UK car manufacturing. So, David, this business has lost $20 billion over the last 15 years or so, GM's European arm. What is Carlos Tavares going to have to do with it?
Well, I think that they want to grow in size. They want to be a much bigger operation to get sort of scale economies. I think they hope to share technology across different brands, across Peugeot, Citroën, Opel, Vauxhall, and they will look to cut costs. There's various ways they can do that. They can do that through procurement, buying stuff together, by sharing technology. I think down the line it's going to be inevitable, though, that there's likely to be plant closures and job losses, despite what Tavares said today. So I think they're going to have to look at that longer term to try and cut costs. The question then will be where the axe will fall.
Well, quite so. I mean, he's a particularly renowned, tough manager. Is it inevitable that the axe is going to fall in the UK?
It's not inevitable, but I think the UK plants are vulnerable for a number of reasons. One, from that excellent piece just then, in terms of the uncertainty created by Brexit and the fact that some key decisions over where, say, the next generation Astra will be built will be made in 2018, slap bang in the middle of Article 50 negotiations. We don't know whether the UK car industry will be in the single market or even in the customs union. The other factor, of course, is that the UK flexible labour markets mean that it's very easy to sack workers in the UK. So if Peugeot is looking to close plants, then it can do that more easily in the UK than in, say, France, where, by the way, the French government has a stake in the company. And we did see that 10 years ago when they shut that Peugeot plant near Coventry, not very far from here. That plant was an efficient plant, it was a profitable plant, it was just easier to sack workers in the UK.
Indeed, although it's not impossible to lay off workers in continental Europe, and indeed GM did close a plant at Bochum in Germany a few years ago.
They did, although, put that in context, there's only been one plant closure in Germany since the Second World War. So that shows how unusual it is. Now, you've got the French government that owns a stake in the firm. I think they are not going to accept any plant closures in France. You've got a German government that said that their number one priority is to protect plants and research and development capacity there. So there's a real danger, I think, of a kind of French-German stitch-up here and the British being left on the side going forward. I don't think all is lost. The key decision is going to be in 2018. We're going to see, I think, unions and management working very flexibly to get costs down. I expect the government to offer some sort of deal like it did with Nissan. But ultimately, the key driver, I think, is going to be what form of Brexit we have going forward.
Realistically, then, what can the government do? It's interesting you say that there could be some sort of deal, but what can the government actually do in practice?
Well, I think we've just seen the government's Green Paper on industrial strategy. Oddly, that didn't mention very much about the supply chain. So I think one of the things it could do is to help rebuild the supply chain in the UK so that there is more local sourcing of components. It can help as well in terms of innovation, and it can help in terms of skills development. Plus, if you add in some launch aid, for example, then you could see the government making a case to keep production in the UK, as it did with Nissan. Interestingly, though, on Nissan have since said that they will review that decision when the form of Brexit becomes clearer. So ultimately, I think, what the industry wants to see is the UK car industry as far as possible inside the single market and certainly inside the customs union. Most of the car plants that are here in the UK, including that current Vauxhall plant at Elmsmead Port, aren't serving the UK market, they're serving the European single market.
Indeed. I mean, are there many plants in Europe that are as dependent, or in the UK, that are as dependent on membership of the customs union as Ellesmere Port, for example? 3/4 of components are imported.
It's one of the most vulnerable, I think, to the form of Brexit, even before this takeovers. But I think all of the big plants of the mass players, so we think about Honda, Toyota, Nissan, and also Vauxhall, Ellesmere Port, they are producing largely for the single market, and a hard Brexit would affect all of them. In fact, if we have a hard Brexit, I really do think it's going to kind of throw a spanner in the works of the UK car industry. You know, if you think about tariffs of 4% on components, 10% on the final product, this is an industry that's never had profitability of 10%. That's going to have a huge impact on the industry going forward.